So today I want to talk about what the Trump administration describes as a campaign against drug cartels. You may have seen the controversy over a US strike on a small boat in the Caribbean last September, which US officials said belonged to drug traffickers. They also said 11 people were killed. But now Congress has been scrutinizing what happened. That's because the Washington Post reported that there were two strikes on that boat. Two men survived the first blast, clung to the wreckage, and were then killed in a follow-up strike. A strike followed quickly by a second one is often referred to as a double tap strike. It's controversial because the second strike can hit survivors, and that goes against international law. The Geneva Conventions protect people who can no longer fight. For example, the wounded, shipwrecked, captured, or anyone who's surrendering. The US Defense Department's War Manual reflects those same protections. Double tap strikes have been reported in prior US counterterror operations under George W. Bush and Obama, but this one stands out because this wasn't a conventional battlefield. It was a small boat at sea with alleged smugglers, not combatants. So US lawmakers have asked for answers on who ordered that strike. Was it the Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth? And were the survivors intentionally targeted? The White House says Admiral Frank Bradley, who oversaw the strikes, ordered the second strike, and that he acted within his authority and the law, according to the White House. So far, lawmakers are divided on what happened based on their party's lines. But this is just one strike. There have been many others. So I wanted to give you some background about these operations. Earlier this year, Trump signed an executive order that paved the way to designate certain cartels and criminal groups as foreign terrorist organizations. They included groups in Mexico and entities linked to Venezuela and El Salvador. The administration also alleged Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro is tied to those networks. Now, he was indicted in the US on narco-terrorism charges back in 2020, but never taken into custody. This year, the Drug Enforcement Agency issued a new reward for tips leading to his arrest as the administration ramped up rhetoric against him. In the summer, the US also started ramping up its military presence in the Caribbean and later extending into the Eastern Pacific, bringing in warships, a nuclear submarine, and thousands of personnel. On the 2nd of September, Trump announced the first operation, the strikes on that Venezuela-linked boat that lawmakers are now examining. But since then, US officials have announced other strikes across the Caribbean and Eastern Pacific, with dozens of fatalities reported. Officials have released some infrared and other unclassified footage, but there's been no publicly released proof of drugs aboard, no public identification of those killed, and few details of who they were. At least 4 countries, Venezuela, Colombia, Ecuador, and Trinidad and Tobago, say their citizens were killed or affected. Families and local officials say many were fishermen or small boat crew. And several governments, especially Venezuela, are demanding evidence of criminal ties. There's also a big legal question. The UN Human Rights Office has raised concerns about the legal basis for these strikes. Are these operations part of an armed conflict, as the administration claims? If not, human rights law applies. But even in wars, there are rules that apply. Either way, you can't strike people who are no longer able to fight back, like the wounded or shipwrecked. Now, amid legal concerns, the UK was reported to have scaled back some intelligence sharing with the US, although there's been no official confirmation from the UK government. So, the White House maintains these strikes are lawful and necessary in America's war on drugs. And Trump says he intends to expand the campaign and start land-based operations very soon, although some US lawmakers say that would require congressional authorization, so keep an eye out for that. That's it for now. As always, you can find me on my socials or subscribe on my YouTube channel if you want more explainers like this. Thanks for watching.